You're going to throw her into that storm? Marcus Reed asked as Travis Cole held open the fire door and snow swept across the third-floor carpet. 8-year-old Nia shivered beneath the yellow quilt her mother had sewn, then pulled it from her shoulders. "Give her mine," she whispered. Marcus wrapped the blanket around the soaked stranger while Travis recorded him. By sunrise, that same quilt would lie beside a signed agreement purchasing Grayson Arms. 3 hours earlier, the building had sounded almost normal. Fluorescent lights hummed above the narrow hallways. Somebody's television murmured behind apartment 3C, and the air carried the faint smells of bleach, fried onions, and hot metal. Marcus moved quietly from radiator to radiator with his red flashlight between his teeth and his black tape-bound maintenance notebook tucked beneath one arm. He wore a navy work shirt with Marcus stitched over the pocket, worn safety boots, and the brown jacket Nia liked to borrow because the sleeves swallowed her hands. The first strange thing was not the cold. It was the sound. Somewhere inside the wall, a pipe struck once, sharp as a wrench dropped on concrete. Then came 2 softer knocks. Then nothing. Marcus stopped beside the elevator and listened. The boiler usually answered with a low mechanical shudder. Tonight, the building seemed to hold its breath. "Dad!" Nia stood in their doorway, the yellow quilt gathered under her chin. One blue star near the corner had begun to fray, but the letters NR were still clear beneath it. Maya had stitched them by hand before the illness made her fingers too weak to hold a needle. "Go back inside, baby," Marcus said. "Keep the bedroom door closed." He placed his palm against the radiator. The metal was cooling. Before he could reach his radio, the fire door at the far end opened and a woman stepped inside as if the wind had pushed her there. Her gray coat was soaked through. Melted snow ran from the hem onto the carpet, and one sole of her shoe had separated enough to slap softly with each step. She did not beg. She simply leaned one hand against the wall and tried to steady her breathing. Marcus moved toward her.
"Mom, Are.
You hurt." Her eyes lifted to his, alert despite the trembling in her jaw. "Just cold." The elevator opened behind him. Travis emerged in a pressed charcoal coat, carrying his phone and wearing the patient expression he used whenever residents were watching. "Sir, you can't remain here," he told the woman, as though reading from a hospitality manual. "This is private property, and we have safety obligations." "She needs 10 minutes out of the wind," Marcus said. Travis smiled without warmth. "Marcus, I appreciate your concern, but compassion without procedure creates liability." He raised his phone and began recording before he reached the fire door. The woman's eyes flicked toward the lens, then toward Nia, who had crept into the hallway with the quilt around her shoulders. Travis pulled the door open. Snow spun beneath the emergency light. "Please exit voluntarily," he said. The woman took one uncertain step. Her knee buckled. Marcus caught her before she hit the floor. Nia's small fingers tightened around the quilt. She looked at the woman's purple knuckles, then at the white cloud of her own breath. Without being told, she slipped off the blanket. "Give her mine." Marcus hesitated only long enough to wrap his jacket around Nia. Then he knelt and placed the yellow quilt around the stranger's shoulders, folding the frayed corner beneath her chin. The woman closed her hand over the embroidered initials as if they meant something she could not yet say. Travis kept filming. "Your job is to protect the building," he warned. Marcus rose between him and the open door. "People are the building." The smile disappeared from Travis's face for less than a second. He shut the door, tapped his screen, and slid a suspension notice beneath Marcus's apartment door. Then he said the heat was operating normally. Marcus looked past him toward the silent radiator, pulled a pocket thermometer from his toolbox, and watched the red line fall. 38 degrees. On Travis's phone, the recording timer was still running. 38 degrees. Marcus held the thermometer beneath the fluorescent light until the red line stopped moving, then wrote the number in his black tape-bound notebook. Travis lowered his phone just enough to glance at it. "The system is functioning. The metal is cold. Your opinion isn't the official record." The hallway smelled of wet carpet and radiator dust. Behind half-open apartment doors, residents watched without stepping out, their faces pale in the blue emergency light. Marcus closed his toolbox, then moved his brown work jacket higher around Nia's shoulders. The sleeves covered her hands completely. "Are your fingers warm?" he asked. Nia nodded, though her teeth clicked once before she pressed her lips together. She glanced toward the yellow blanket wrapped around Evelyn, then leaned against her father's side. Travis tilted his phone so the camera framed Marcus, Nia, and the stranger together. "For everyone's safety," he said, "management is documenting an unauthorized guest, an employee refusing direction, and a possible disruption of essential building operations." His voice remained gentle, almost apologetic. That made the accusation sound cleaner than it was. Evelyn sat on a narrow bench near the laundry room, her wet shoes leaving 2 dark prints on the tile. She kept the quilt folded around her shoulders and watched Marcus instead of Travis. Marcus did not ask the residents to defend him. He did not remind them whose sinks he had repaired without charging overtime or how many nights he had carried groceries upstairs when the elevator failed. He simply took the suspension notice from beneath his apartment door, read it once, and slipped it into the back of his notebook. The elevator chimed. Owen Pike appeared on Travis's screen through a video call, seated in a bright office with a framed photograph of himself handing out food boxes behind him. His silver hair was neatly combed, and the green sweater he wore carried the logo of the Pike Community Renewal Foundation. "Marcus," Owen said softly, "I'm hearing you've had a difficult night. The 3rd floor lost heat. We're discussing your well-being right now." The 3rd floor lost heat. Owen paused as though Marcus had interrupted an act of kindness. "Grief can make responsible people react emotionally. No one here is judging you for what you've been through. We simply need you to follow procedure so we can keep every family safe." A woman near apartment 3B whispered that Marcus had never been the same since Maya died. Another voice answered that maybe a man raising a child alone should know better than to risk his housing over a stranger. Nia's fingers tightened around the embroidered name patch on Marcus's work shirt. When one resident looked at the blanket and said Maya would not have wanted it given away, Marcus felt Nia's body stiffen. He crouched until they were eye level. "Your mother taught us what it was for," he said. "Keeping someone warm." Nia looked at the frayed blue star resting against Evelyn's shoulder and breathed out slowly. Evelyn's gaze dropped to the initials NR. Her thumb traced the uneven stitching once, then stopped when Travis stepped between her and Marcus. "This conversation is for residents and staff," he told her. "Please don't involve yourself." Evelyn lifted her eyes. "You were sending me into the snow 5 minutes ago, and now we're trying to resolve the situation respectfully." Travis opened a blue folder and removed a maintenance form. He placed it on top of Marcus's toolbox and clicked a pen. The paper stated that heat service to the 3rd floor had been restored at 11:40 p.m. Marcus looked at the wall clock. It read 12:23. "Sign here," Travis said. "The heat is on. Then the radiators will confirm it." Marcus laid 2 fingers against the nearest one. The steel remained lifeless beneath his skin, and the faint white mist of his breath drifted across its chipped paint. Nia watched the thermometer while Evelyn watched the time printed on the form. "That document says the repair was completed before the pipe stopped," Marcus said. Travis's professional smile tightened. "You're a maintenance worker, Marcus. Not an engineer, not an attorney, and not the owner. Your responsibility is to complete assigned tasks, not reinterpret management records." Marcus pushed the pen back across the toolbox. "I won't sign something I didn't witness." Owen sighed from the screen. "Think carefully. Your apartment is part of your employment package. Nia needs stability more than this. Building needs another argument." Marcus's jaw shifted, but his voice stayed low. "She also needs to know her father doesn't sign lies." For the first time, Evelyn looked at him as though the answer had disturbed an assumption she had carried into the building. Not trust. Not yet. Just attention. Travis reached for the form. Marcus asked for the carbon copy beneath it. The manager's hand stopped. Then, with one quick motion, Travis tore away the lower sheet, folded it twice, and pushed it into his coat pocket. The rip sounded unusually loud in the frozen hallway. Marcus looked from the missing copy to the restoration time printed at the top and understood something colder than the dead radiator. Travis had not filled out the form after the failure. He had arrived with it already completed. Marcus kept his eyes on the folded carbon copy in Travis's coat pocket. He could have reached for it. He could have raised his voice and asked the residents to notice what had just happened. Instead, he closed the maintenance form inside his notebook and turned toward Evelyn. Her lips had lost color, and the wet hem of her coat had begun to stiffen in the cold. "Can you walk?" he asked. "I think so. Don't guess." Marcus slid one arm beneath her elbow and guided her toward the laundry room, where the dryers still held a little warmth. Travis watched them go with the expression of a man observing someone make the wrong choice on purpose. "You're suspended," he called after Marcus. "Anything you do now is outside your assigned duties." Marcus did not turn around. "She's still cold." The laundry room smelled of detergent, warm lint, and the damp wool of Evelyn's coat. One fluorescent tube flickered above a row of dented machines. Marcus pulled a metal cup from the utility cabinet, filled it with warm water, and wrapped a clean shop towel around it so Evelyn could hold it without burning her hands. Nia sat beside her on a plastic chair, swallowed by Marcus's brown jacket, her bare knees pressed together beneath her pajama pants. "Is she going to be okay?" she whispered. Marcus touched 2 fingers to Evelyn's wrist, counting silently. "She needs somewhere warm tonight." He took out his old phone and began calling shelters. The first was full. The second had stopped taking arrivals. The third placed him on hold beneath a recording that repeated every 40 seconds. While he waited, he checked Evelyn's breathing and asked only what he needed to know. No family questions. No demand for an explanation. No attempt to turn her fear into a story about himself. Nia reached over and straightened the yellow quilt where it had slipped from Evelyn's shoulder. Her small thumb brushed the frayed blue star. "My mom made that," she said. Evelyn looked at the uneven stitches around the initials NR. "She did beautiful work." She said crooked stitches still hold. Marcus lowered his eyes for a moment. Maya had said that during one of her last good weeks, laughing when the needle refused to follow the chalk line. He had promised her he would keep Nia warm. Tonight, the apartment behind them had no heat. His job was hanging from a form already filled out, and the money in his wallet had been divided exactly enough for 2 school lunches. The shelter finally answered. 1 bed remained across town. Marcus reserved it, then checked the bus schedule. The last route left in 19 minutes. "I can repay you," Evelyn said as he counted the bills in his wallet. "You don't know me." "That's not the point." He separated the fare from the lunch money. "My daughter made a choice. Don't turn it into a bill." Travis appeared in the doorway, phone lowered now. "Marcus, management cannot be responsible for transporting unauthorized persons." "You won't be. You keep confusing kindness with good judgment." Marcus slipped the bus fare into his shirt pocket and stood. "No. I'm keeping them separate from paperwork." Before leaving, he walked the 3rd floor with Nia beside him and Evelyn moving slowly behind. At apartment 3F, a baby cried beneath layers of clothing. At 3A, Mrs. Lewis sat near her oxygen machine wearing a knit hat indoors. Marcus opened radiator valves, checked vents, and wrote each reading in his notebook. In the emergency supply closet, the inventory sheet showed 12 portable heaters received 3 weeks earlier. Only 2 remained on the shelf. Marcus wiped dust from their handles, carried one to the family with the baby, and placed the other beside Mrs. Lewis's oxygen machine at a safe distance. He kept none for his own apartment. "Daddy?" Nia asked as they returned to the hallway. "What will we use?" Marcus pulled the brown jacket tighter around her. "We'll sleep in the small room. One room is easier to keep warm." Evelyn watched him say it as if he were discussing a minor inconvenience, not choosing cold for himself. At the bottom of the inventory sheet, the line for all 12 heaters bore the initials TC. Marcus tore nothing out. He photographed the page, wrote the cabinet count in his notebook, and replaced the clipboard exactly where he found it. Evelyn glanced at the signature, then at Travis standing at the far end of the hall. Without asking permission, She lifted her phone and quietly photographed the same page. On the way to the bus stop, snow squeaked beneath Marcus's boots, and Nia held his hand with both of hers. Evelyn kept the yellow quilt wrapped close. Just before the bus arrived, she asked, "Who signed for the missing heaters?" Marcus looked back at the dark windows of Grayson Arms. The man who came prepared to prove the heat was fixed before it ever failed. Evelyn's hand tightened around the frayed corner of the blanket, and for the first time, she looked at the initials on the inventory sheet not as missing equipment, but as the beginning of a pattern. The bus doors folded open with a hiss, but Evelyn did not step aboard. Snow clung to the yellow quilt around her shoulders, melting into dark beads along the frayed blue star. "You should go," Marcus said. "The shelter won't hold the bed." "What happens if this building is sold?" she asked. "That's not your problem tonight. Do the tenants have a right of first refusal?" The legal phrase landed strangely beneath the buzzing street lamp. Marcus looked at her more carefully. People who had spent the night searching for warmth usually asked where the bus stopped, not which rights survived a property transfer. Evelyn seemed to realize the same thing. She lowered her eyes, pulled the quilt tighter, and reached for the handrail. Silver chain slipped from beneath her wet collar. Hanging from it was a small key, polished smooth at the edges with 3 narrow lines cut across the bow. Nia stared at it from inside Marcus's oversized jacket. "That's pretty," she said. Evelyn covered the pendant with her hand. It belonged to someone who believed doors should open for people. The driver tapped the steering wheel. Marcus handed Evelyn the damp bus ticket, its ink already beginning to blur at one corner. "Keep this. The time may matter if anyone asks where you went." Evelyn paused. "Do you think someone will?" "I think a manager who fills out repair forms before equipment fails will ask whatever helps him most." She studied his face, perhaps waiting for him to accuse her of something too. He did not. He only lifted Nia into the first warm seat, then stepped back onto the curb because he had bought 2 fares, not 3. "You're not coming?" Evelyn asked. "My daughter is." Nia looked up quickly. Marcus pressed the red flashlight into her hands and pointed toward the bus shelter visible from Grayson Arms. "I'll walk beside the bus until the next light. Then we go home together." Evelyn watched him through the glass as the bus moved 1 block through the snow, Marcus keeping pace on the sidewalk until it stopped again. He took Nia's hand when she stepped down, checked that the brown jacket was still closed around her, and turned back toward the building. By the time they reached Grayson Arms, Travis had already begun repairing the story. A printed notice covered the suspension sheet on Marcus's door. It warned residents that an employee had violated guest access rules and interfered with ongoing heating restoration. No name appeared, but everyone on the 3rd floor knew who it meant. Near the elevator, Travis spoke quietly to 2 tenants while holding his phone against his chest. "No one is being punished." "Then why is his access suspended?" one tenant asked. "Because safety requires consistency." His tone remained polished, patient, almost wounded by the need to explain. When he saw Marcus, he smiled. "I hope you understand this isn't personal." "Where did the heaters go?" Marcus asked. The hallway slowed. Travis's smile held, but his thumb moved across the phone screen. "They were distributed during the winter assistance campaign." "To which apartments?" "That information is protected." Marcus glanced at the wall behind him. A sheet of white paper had been pinned to the community board beneath a flyer for a canned food drive. At the top was a silver key formed by 3 narrow lines, the same shape that had rested against Evelyn's throat. Nia tugged his sleeve. "That's her key." Travis turned too quickly. "It's only a logo." He crossed the hall, pulled the page down, and folded it inward before Marcus could read more. "What company?" Marcus asked. "A vendor that is no longer involved." "Then why hide the name?" "Because incomplete information creates panic." Travis's explanation sounded reasonable enough for the residents nearest the elevator. Property companies posted notices all the time. Vendors changed. Meetings were canceled. A damp woman might once have worked in housing or known a legal phrase from personal experience. Marcus had no proof that Evelyn was connected to anything. He had only a symbol and a feeling that too many people were moving faster than the cold could justify. Travis crushed the folded page into one hand and reached for the trash chute. Marcus did not grab him. He raised his old phone and took one photograph before the paper disappeared. The flash struck the page at an angle, freezing half the text beneath Travis's fingers. "You're documenting management materials while suspended?" Travis asked. "I'm documenting what was posted for residents." "Delete it." Marcus lowered the phone. No, Travis stepped close enough for Marcus to smell mint gum beneath his expensive cologne. "You're tired. Your daughter is cold. Go inside before concern becomes insubordination." Marcus looked past him to the dead radiator, then down at the photograph. The image was blurred at the edges, but the center remained clear. Havenbridge Housing Trust. Beneath it, in smaller type, were the words Acquisition Review. 8:30 a.m. Marcus checked the time. It was 7:41. Nia leaned against him and whispered, "Wasn't that paper already torn?" Marcus enlarged. The image. The lower corner had been ripped away before Travis removed it, exactly where a property address or authorization signature would normally appear. The meeting was less than an hour away, and the manager who called the notice meaningless had destroyed the only part that might have shown who invited Havenbridge into Grayson Arms. The meeting was less than an hour away, and Marcus no longer had access to the room that could explain why. He stood beneath the community board with his old phone in one hand, enlarging the blurred photograph until the words Acquisition Review filled the cracked screen. Behind him, the elevator opened. Evelyn stepped out wearing the same damp gray coat, the yellow quilt still wrapped around her shoulders. Snow had melted into the frayed blue star, and the silver key at her throat caught the fluorescent light. "I need to see the boiler room," she said. "Do you have written authorization?" Marcus asked. "Not with me." "Then I can't take you inside." Travis appeared at the far end of the hall, carrying a paper cup and the calm expression of a man arriving to solve a misunderstanding. "Marcus has been suspended," he said. "He no longer has authority to escort anyone through restricted areas." Evelyn looked from Travis to Marcus. "Even if there may be an immediate safety issue?" "Especially then," Travis replied. "We follow procedure here." Marcus folded his phone into his pocket. "Procedure says I don't open that door without an inspector present." For a moment, Evelyn's fingers stopped on the quilt. She had expected resistance from Travis. Marcus's refusal seemed to surprise her more. He was turning down the easiest chance to impress someone connected to Havenbridge, even though he still did not know exactly who she was. Travis smiled. "Good. Then we're all being reasonable." 3 clicks came from behind the basement fire door. Marcus's head turned before anyone else reacted. Click, 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 then silence. No low rush of the exhaust fan. No vibration through the concrete. Just the thin hum of fluorescent lights and the distant cry of a baby upstairs. Marcus set down his toolbox. "Move away from that door." Travis gave a small laugh. "The system cycles." "Not like that." Marcus crossed the lobby and pressed the back of his fingers against the painted metal. The door was warm near the bottom and cold above the latch. He looked toward the ceiling vent, then toward the stairwell. "Nia, go sit with Mrs. Lewis. Keep your jacket closed." Nia nodded and moved without argument, the sleeves still covering her hands. Marcus knocked on apartment 1B, where a young couple lived with their 6-month-old son. "Take the baby to the front entrance," he told them. "Bring a blanket. Don't wait for the elevator." Travis lowered his voice. "You're alarming residents without authorization." Marcus was already walking toward Mrs. Lewis's apartment. "Call the fire department." "There is no emergency." Marcus stopped and looked at him. "Then they'll tell us that." The simplicity of the answer drained the room of movement. A chair leg that had been scraping across the community room floor went still. Evelyn slowly lowered her hand from the quilt and took out her phone. She did not call Marcus brave. She sent a short message, then said, "Preserve every original record from this morning. Nothing gets deleted." Travis's eyes shifted toward her. "Who exactly are you speaking to?" "Someone who understands procedure." Within minutes, the lobby filled with cold air from the open front doors, the bitter smell of wet coats, and the clipped voices of firefighters carrying detection meters. A city inspector arrived behind them and asked who had identified the problem. Travis answered first. Our maintenance employee may have overreacted after being disciplined. Marcus did not argue. He handed the inspector his notebook, opened to the page with the 3 clicks written beside the time, and pointed toward the basement door. The exhaust fan didn't engage. The inspector studied the entry, then nodded to the firefighters. Only after the area was cleared did Marcus unlock the mechanical room under supervision. Heat rolled out carrying the smell of scorched dust and old oil. The control panel light blinked amber. Near the low water cutoff, a short piece of copper wire had been wrapped around 2 terminals, bypassing the safety switch. The factory seal hung from 1 screw, sliced cleanly through. No one spoke for several seconds. Travis set his paper cup on the floor too carefully. That could have been temporary maintenance. Marcus crouched without touching the wire. He used his phone to photograph the panel, the broken seal, and the clock above the workbench in one frame. Then he angled his red flashlight toward the replacement valve. The serial number stamped into the metal did not match the number on the repair invoice clipped to the wall. Was this the part listed as installed last month? He asked. Travis's jaw tightened. Let me handle this privately before people misunderstand. The inspector is standing here. Marcus, don't make this larger than it is. A firefighter's meter chirped once in the silence. Nia, watching from beside Mrs. Lewis near the lobby doors, saw her father remain on one knee with both hands visible, careful not to disturb a single piece of evidence. Her shoulders loosened beneath his oversized jacket. Travis stepped closer and spoke through his teeth without losing his professional smile. You were told to keep Zone 3 running until the walkthrough. The inspector looked up. Evelyn's thumb stopped over her phone screen. Marcus lifted his eyes from the mismatched serial number, and the room seemed to narrow around one word. Until Travis realized too late that he had not denied knowing the safety had been bypassed. He had admitted there was a deadline. Until what? Marcus asked. Travis looked at the inspector, then at the copper wire looped around the safety terminals. Until the scheduled review, he said, smoothing his coat as if the right wording could repair what everyone had heard. Temporary adjustments are sometimes necessary in older buildings. The city inspector photographed the sliced seal. Not adjustments that disable a cutoff. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them. A drop of condensation struck the metal casing, and the sound was sharp enough to make Travis glance toward the ceiling camera. Evelyn stepped beside the workbench and placed her phone face down. Who authorized the repair invoice? Travis shifted his attention. To her. This is an internal matter. The invoice number is visible from here. You need to leave the mechanical area. His professional tone remained intact, but sweat had appeared along his hairline. Marcus could have told the residents waiting outside that Travis had just trapped himself. He could have used the moment to demand his job back. Instead, he closed his toolbox and asked the inspector to seal the room. No one touches the panel until the city documents it. Travis turned toward him. You are still suspended. Then I have even less reason to touch your evidence. That answer held Evelyn's attention. Not because Marcus sounded angry, because he did not. In the community room upstairs, the yellow quilt lay across Evelyn's shoulders, while an inspector copied the serial number from Marcus's photograph. A portable printer clicked on the folding table. Beside it sat the heat restoration form, the inventory sheet for 12 heaters, Marcus's black notebook, and the invoice for a valve that was supposedly installed the previous month. Evelyn opened the brown leather folder she had carried beneath her coat. A white identification card rested inside. Havenbridge Housing Trust. Evelien Hart, Chief Executive Officer. Marcus read it once, then looked at the silver key hanging at her throat. You came here for the acquisition review. I came because Havenbridge holds a right of first refusal on this property, she said. If the owner violates the preservation agreement, we may have the right to purchase before a private developer. Marcus glanced toward the hallway. where Nia sat beside Mrs. Lewis with the red flashlight resting across her knees. Does Owen know? He knows the clause exists. He believes he can clear enough apartments before anyone proves a pattern. Evelyn did not ask Marcus to trust her. She turned the inspector's tablet so he could see 3 independent records. The city temperature sensor showed the 3rd floor dropping before midnight. The utility log showed the boiler drawing power without completing a safe cycle. A fire station monitor registered the ventilation fault minutes after Marcus wrote down the 3 clicks. His notebook had not created the story. It had preserved it. The printer stopped. In the sudden quiet, the documents between them looked less like separate mistakes and more like pieces cut from the same design. An investigator from Havenbridge joined by video call. She confirmed that the valve serial number belonged to a unit delivered to a warehouse across town. The payment had still been charged to Grayson Arms. The 10 missing heaters had been purchased through the same maintenance account, each approved with the initials TC. That proves Travis handled the transactions, Evelyn said. It does not yet prove Owen ordered them. Marcus looked toward the maintenance corridor. Years earlier, before management replaced the online cameras, he had changed the backup battery in an analog recording box inside the basement service cage. The system did not transmit to the office. It stored locally. There may be another record, he said. Travis, who had been standing near the door, stopped wiping his glasses. The old cameras were decommissioned. The network cameras were. Marcus closed his notebook. The analog box was never removed. Travis's phone disappeared into his coat pocket. This conversation should pause until counsel is present. Evelyn's expression changed, not with triumph but recognition. Now you want procedure. Marcus ignored the opening to humiliate him. He called the city evidence unit and asked them to collect the recorder under seal. When Evelyn offered to have her own security team retrieve it faster, Marcus shook his head. If this goes public, Owen's attorneys will attack how it was handled before they answer what it shows. The evidence unit opened the service cage 40 minutes later. Dust covered the black recording box, but a red indicator still pulsed behind the grill. On the first recovered segment, Travis entered the boiler room beside a contractor carrying a canvas tool bag. The timestamp matched the false restoration form. Travis leaned toward the control panel. The contractor reached for the cutoff switch. Then the picture dissolved into white static. No one spoke. Marcus noticed the recording counter was still advancing beneath the damaged image. The footage had not ended. Something had been laid over it. The technician said the original track might still be recoverable, but not before Owen's public resident meeting that morning. Evelyn closed the leather folder. He's going to announce the removals before we finish. Marcus looked through the glass at the families waiting in coats inside their own building. Then this can't stay in a closed room. By 9 o'clock, the lobby of Grayson Arms had been arranged to look less like a building in crisis and more like a campaign event. Folding chairs faced a portable podium beneath a vinyl banner that read Resident Renewal Program. A coffee urn steamed beside trays of wrapped pastries, filling the room with the smell of cinnamon while families sat in winter coats because the radiators were still cold. Local cameras pointed toward Owen Pike, not toward the elderly residents holding blankets across their knees. Marcus entered through the side door carrying his black tape-bound notebook and red flashlight. His navy work shirt was wrinkled from the night, and the suspension notice remained folded in his back pocket. Nia walked beside him inside the brown jacket that swallowed her hands, then went directly to sit with Mrs. Lewis near the aisle. Evelyn took a chair in the last row. The yellow quilt was folded across her lap, its frayed blue star visible beneath one hand. She said nothing about the silver key at her throat or the white identification card hidden inside her leather folder. Owen stepped behind the podium and waited until the room quieted. No family should have to live in uncertainty. Then restore the heat, someone called. That is exactly why we are here. Owen's voice remained warm, patient, almost sorrowful. Behind him, a projection screen showed photographs of smiling volunteers standing beside portable heaters and food boxes. He explained that years of deferred maintenance had made Grayson Arms unsafe, and that responsible ownership now required a temporary relocation of every tenant within 30 days. The word eviction never crossed his lips. He called it a transition. He called it protection. He called it dignity. Then Travis distributed a printed report stating that Marcus had interfered with boiler operations after being disciplined, causing Zone 3 to shut down before the scheduled acquisition review. A low murmur moved through the chairs. Owen lifted one hand. I understand Mr. Reed has served this community in many informal ways, but good intentions do not replace training, authority, or accountability. For one moment, the story seemed to settle exactly where Owen wanted it. A maintenance worker under stress had overreacted. A manager had followed procedure. A damaged building now required everyone to leave. Even the photographs appeared to support him. 12 portable heaters stood in a neat row beneath a Pike Foundation banner. Marcus looked at the picture, then at the inventory page inside his notebook. Owen turned toward him. Marcus, we do not want this disagreement to harm your daughter. Travis placed a sealed envelope on the table in front of the podium. Inside were 6 months of rent assistance, severance pay, and a confidentiality agreement. Enough money for a deposit. Enough to move Nia before the next snowfall. Enough to make silence resemble responsible fatherhood. Take a moment, Owen said. A good father protects his child from instability. Marcus did not reach for the envelope. Nia looked across the aisle at Mrs. Lewis's oxygen tube, then raised her eyes to him. Will she still have heat? She asked. The question was quiet, almost lost beneath the camera shutters. Marcus looked at the envelope, then pushed it back across the table with 2 fingers. A good father doesn't buy his child's safety with somebody else's danger. The room changed by a degree too small to name. A reporter lowered her pen. Evelyn's hand became still on the yellow quilt. Owen's expression remained compassionate, but Travis shifted his weight toward the projector controls. Marcus opened his notebook. He did not accuse Owen of ordering sabotage. He read the 3rd floor temperature, the time written beside it, and the restoration form claiming the heat had been repaired 37 minutes before the pipe stopped. He showed the photograph of the bypass safety switch, then the invoice, bearing a serial number that belonged to a valve delivered across town. Owen smiled sadly. Mr. Reed is presenting technical fragments without context. Mr. Cole has already explained that temporary maintenance measures were necessary. Necessary for what? Marcus asked. To preserve service during inspection. Which inspection? Owen hesitated. The scheduled property review. Marcus turned one page. The notice for that review was removed before residents could read it. Travis stepped forward. Because incomplete information causes panic. Marcus held up the photograph from his old phone. The Havenbridge logo glowed on the cracked screen. Along with the time, 8:30 a.m., Evelyn watched Owen's face rather than the image. The first crack appeared when he looked toward her before anyone had identified who she was. Owen recovered quickly. Havenbridge is one of several organizations we consult. Their presence changes nothing. He tapped the remote, and the photograph of the donated heaters returned to the screen. This is what responsible stewardship looks like. Marcus studied the image. Each heater had a white inventory sticker near the handle. He enlarged the photograph on the projector using the reporter's laptop. The first visible serial number matched one of the 10 units missing from the emergency closet. The second matched another. The pastries, the cameras, the soft green charity logo suddenly seemed arranged around stolen equipment. No one spoke. Travis moved toward the power cord. Let's not create a false impression from a publicity photograph. Don't turn it off, Evelyn said from the last row. Her voice was no longer weak, and Travis stopped with his hand inches from the plug. Owen looked at the folded quilt on her lap, then at the silver key resting against her dark blouse. Before he could speak, the city inspector entered carrying a sealed evidence case. Behind him, a technician connected the recovered analog recording box to the projector. Static filled the screen. The timestamp from the boiler room appeared beneath the white noise. Marcus closed his notebook. Evelyn stood with the yellow blanket in her arms as the technician placed one finger. over the key that would reveal what had been hidden under the damaged footage. The technician pressed the key. White static peeled away from the projector screen, revealing Travis inside the boiler room beside a contractor with a canvas tool bag. The timestamp matched the false restoration form. Travis watched himself cut the factory seal, bend a copper wire around the low water cutoff, and step back while the contractor held up a phone. A voice crackled through the recording. "Hold Zone 3 until the vacancy inspection."
Ope.
Nobody moved. The coffee urn clicked as its heating element shut off. Somewhere near the back row, a paper cup settled against a folding chair. Owen Pike stared at the screen as if distance alone might make the initials belong to someone else. "That recording has no context," his attorney said. "The audio could have been altered." The city inspector opened the sealed evidence report. The original file was recovered from a recorder under municipal chain of custody. The metadata has been authenticated. Travis's hand slipped from the projector table. His pen struck the tile and rolled beneath the podium. Evelyn walked down the aisle carrying the yellow quilt. She unfolded it slowly and placed it across the table beside Marcus's notebook, the heat restoration form, and the photograph of the missing heaters beneath Owen's charity banner. The frayed blue star faced the cameras. "So did the initials NR. This blanket brought me back into this building," she said. "But it is not why I am standing here." She removed the white identification card from her leather folder and set it beneath the silver key logo. "My name is Evelyn Hart. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Havenbridge Housing Trust." Owen's face lost color. Evelyn placed a signed purchase agreement beside the quilt. The time beneath the signatures read 8:12 a.m. Havenbridge exercised its right of first refusal this morning. "We have purchased Grayson Arms, subject to the emergency preservation order now before the Detroit Housing Commission." The room did not erupt. It became quieter. The projector fan sounded suddenly enormous. Nia reached for Marcus's hand from beside Mrs. Lewis, and he closed his fingers gently around hers. Owen's attorney rose. "A property transfer does not establish wrongdoing." "Correct," Evelyn said. "The evidence does." On the screen appeared the city temperature data confirming Marcus's readings, followed by utility logs showing the boiler drawing power without completing a safe cycle. The supplier's records proved the build replacement valve had been delivered to another property. The serial numbers on Owen's charity photograph matched the heaters missing from the emergency closet. Then came the carrier report. The message heard in the recording had originated from Owen's phone. Next, an internal email appeared with the subject line "vacancy targets." Its language matched the phrases Travis had used in the so-called voluntary relocation forms. "Empty units," "accelerated transition," "maintain service appearance through inspection." Owen gripped the edge of the podium. "Those were planning terms. I never instructed anyone to endanger residents." The commissioner's voice came through the live hearing monitor mounted near the screen. "Mr. Pike, why did you identify the bypass component as the low water cutoff before that detail had been released publicly?" Owen looked toward Travis. Travis looked at the floor. Neither answered. Evelyn opened the preservation agreement to one marked paragraph. Owen's emergency filing, submitted to clear the building for redevelopment, had triggered Havenbridge's purchase right. The procedure he had designed to remove the residents had become the legal mechanism that stopped him. Effective immediately, the commissioner said, all displacement notices are stayed. No resident may be retaliated against for testimony. Mr. Cole's management license is suspended pending investigation. The record concerning Mr. Reed's suspension will be corrected, and the matter is being referred for civil enforcement and prosecutorial review. Owen opened his mouth, but the documents on the table had already answered every version of the story he might tell. The air conditioning vent whispered above him. A camera shutter clicked once, then stopped. Marcus did not smile. He looked at the quilt at the place, where Maya's stitches bent unevenly around Nia's initials, and then at the residents who were still wearing coats inside their own homes. Evelyn turned toward him. "Mr. Reed, Havenbridge wants to know what you need." Marcus rested one hand on Nia's shoulder. "Inspect every unit. Protect every witness. Put heat into the apartments with children and seniors first. And for you? Evelyn asked. Marcus looked at the purchase agreement, the cameras, and the authority that had shifted across the room in less than 10 minutes. I'll answer that after everyone else is safe. The truth had returned his name to him, but what Marcus chose to do with the recognition now waiting at his feet would decide whether this miracle changed only his life or the life of everyone in Grayson Arms. The cameras were packed away before anyone found the courage to speak above a whisper. Owen Pike left through a side door with his attorney, his green charity sweater hidden beneath a dark overcoat. Travis remained long enough to surrender his building keys to the city inspector, then walked past Marcus without meeting his eyes. Marcus did not stop him. He did not ask the residents to watch a man fall. He only turned toward Mrs. Lewis and asked whether her oxygen machine had enough battery to last until the emergency heaters arrived. By noon, the suspension notice had been removed from Marcus's file. By evening, every eviction notice in Grayson Arms had been stamped void under an emergency preservation order. Havenbridge placed families from the coldest units in a nearby hotel, hired an independent engineering firm, and posted a printed repair schedule in the lobby with invoice numbers, inspection dates, and a phone line that did not pass through building management. The first thing Marcus did with his restored access was not enter the office. He carried heaters upstairs. Nia followed at a safe distance beside a Havenbridge employee, wearing her own coat now, her small hand wrapped around the red flashlight Marcus had given her. When they reached Mrs. Lewis's apartment, Nia placed the flashlight on the table and asked, "Will it stay warm this time?" Marcus checked the outlet, the cord, and the space around the heater before switching it on. "Someone besides us will be checking," he said. That's how it should have been. 3 days later, Evelyn found him in the third-floor utility closet labeling replacement valves. His navy work shirt had been washed, but the knees of his work pants were still marked with gray dust. His black tape-bound notebook rested beside a new digital service log. "The board wants you to lead building operations," she said. Marcus kept writing the serial number. "Who would I report to?" Evelyn seemed almost amused by the question. "An independent facilities inspector and the resident council. And if I make a mistake, they document it." Marcus closed the notebook. "Then I'll apply." He did not accept the position as a favor. He submitted his certifications, employment history, and safety records through the same process Havenbridge required of outside candidates. When the review was finished, he was appointed facilities safety coordinator, not because Evelyn had found him in the cold, but because the evidence showed what he did when no one important was watching. At the first resident council meeting, the neighbor who had spoken about Maya stood near the back with both hands wrapped around a paper cup. She apologized to Marcus in front of the adults, then knelt at a respectful distance from Nia. "I said something about your mother that I had no right to say." Nia looked at her father. Marcus did not answer for her. "I'm not ready to talk about it," Nia said. The woman nodded. "That's fair." She later volunteered to manage the public supply inventory, under a rule requiring 2 residents to verify every distribution. Owen's records were referred for civil enforcement and criminal review. Travis lost his management license and agreed to provide documents about the missing equipment and falsified reports. Marcus asked for neither man to be spared nor publicly humiliated. "Let the record be complete," he told the investigator. "Then let the system do what it says it does." The money recovered from fraudulent invoices funded the Maya Reed Warmth Fund. It paid for emergency blankets, safe heaters, temporary lodging, and utility assistance for residents facing shutoffs. The supply cabinet received electronic tracking, but its glass door carried a simpler message in black letters. "Take what you need. Return kindness when you can." Evelyn returned the yellow quilt to Nia on the night the repaired boiler passed inspection. It had been cleaned, but the frayed blue star remained, and the uneven stitches around NR had not been touched. "Some things should keep the mark of what they survived," Evelyn said. Nia pressed the blanket to her face, breathing in clean cotton instead of snow and wet wool. Then she wrapped one side around Marcus and kept the other around herself. Deep inside the walls, the new system engaged. One click, a second, Then the steady low rush of heat moving through pipes that had once gone silent. Marcus listened until the radiator began to warm beneath his palm. He switched off the red flashlight and sat beside his daughter without checking another gauge. Outside their apartment, the first shelf of the emergency cabinet stood empty, because the blanket that had begun everything was back where it belonged. In the quiet that followed, Grayson Arms no longer felt like a place waiting to fail. It felt like a building learning that dignity did not need to shout, and kindness was never wasted. It simply waited for truth to give it somewhere warm to live.